Old age is a time to rest. A time to take things easy. Sit in the sun, watch your grandchildren grow, and maybe play a bit. At 65, a man doesn't ask for much. Only the small joys in life. Only the things he's earned. Old age is a time to rest. But not for people like Pat Donald. When Pat retired, it was to this. Why? It's all a matter of arithmetic. A few months before he put his tools away, Pat Donald sat down to do some hard figuring. What did it cost to live? Cut this, cut that, just keep the bare necessities of a decent life. It still would cost him $120 a month. And now, expected income. Add up the years, average out the monthly wage, check the Social Security table, and the total? $31 a month. Pat could see the choice he would face when he retired. He could starve or get a job. Any kind at all. Work or starve. And this is the choice that faces millions of retired workers today. There are more than 10 million people in the United States over the age of 65 today, and 5 million of them depend on some form of charity to make ends meet. 1 out of every 2. This is besides any Social Security they may get. The UE finds this situation every day in the towns where it's organized. Social Security just isn't enough. How are you going to live on monthly payments of $18? $29, $19, $11. The reports come in from all over. Bridgeport, Connecticut, Bloomfield, New Jersey, Lynn, Massachusetts, Dayton, Ohio, and in Schenectady, New York, the poorhouse. Eleven retired General Electric workers had no place to go but here.
Why can't they give us enough pension to live? Just live.
The Social Security Act went into effect on January 1st, 1937, to provide for the general welfare by establishing a system of federal old age benefits. Let's see how it works. According to the Act, 65 is the beginning of old age. It's also the minimum age for receiving old age benefits. But the Social Security Act does not automatically entitle everyone who reaches 65 to a pension. There are ifs and buts to it. To begin with, before you are eligible for old age benefits, you must have worked as a wage earner. Well, that eliminates some of us. Next, only your employment after 1936 is counted. Well, That eliminates those who haven't worked since 1936, principally the old and the sick. And then if you were a wage earner and did work after 1936, you still wouldn't get any benefits if your job wasn't in an industry covered by the Act. You were not covered and therefore not eligible for benefits if you worked as a farmer, a farm wage earner, a domestic worker, an employee of a non-profit organization like a hospital or church, if you were self-employed, or were one of the 1 million federal civilian employees who are not included in civil service retirement. At the end of 1948, over 20 million workers in America were still not covered by the Social Security Act. And of the more than 10 million people in the United States today who are over the age of 65, 80% are not eligible for Social Security benefits. Well, let's see how it works for someone who worked in an industry that was covered by the Social Security Act. Here's Joe Brown. Each month that Joe worked from 1937 on, his pay was taxed 1% and went into the Social Security Fund. Also, each month that Joe worked, his employer was taxed the same amount. This went on for 10 years. And then Joe became 65. Retirement and time to collect benefits. His pension is determined by his average wage and the length of time he worked. From 1937 to 1947, Joe's average wage was $100 a month. So Joe got from Social Security $27.50 a month. Oh yes, if Joe had a wife over 65 or children under 18, he'd get a few dollars extra. But even if Joe had averaged $250 a month in wages, the maximum allowed in calculating benefits, he'd still only get $44 a month. And under the present act, if Joe could keep working until 1977, giving him 40 years coverage under Social Security, he could still only get a maximum of $56 a month. $56 a month, and that after working 40 years. The result? Joe must dip into his savings as soon as he retires. That is, if he has any. In 1947, the average American family had less than $500 in savings. So, even though he's already been retired once, Joe would have to go to work if he could find a job. Or perhaps finally, he would mortgage his home if he had a home, or move in with his kids. If there was room, or else it makes no difference if you work 20, 30, 40 years helping to build an industry, build the nation. Well, what about industry? What about pensions from industry? GE paints a pretty picture. That's the picture they paint. But the pension of the average GE worker after 30 years service amounts to only $33.50 a month. Wonder who they meant? It couldn't be Charles E. Wilson, president of GE, could it? Mr. Wilson will retire on a pension of $5,500 a month. You heard it, brother, $5,500 a month, and that's every month in the year. At Westinghouse, Mr. William A. Price, president, will get a pension of $18,000 a year. For his workers, nothing for those making under $3,000 a year. At Sylvania, President Don G. Mitchell will get over $12,500 a year. For his workers, a pittance. At General Motors, for Charles E. Wilson when he retires, $25,000 a year. For his workers, nothing. At Philco, William Balderston will get over $24,000 a year. His workers, nothing. And so forth throughout the country. The Bureau of Internal Revenue reports that there are about 7,000 industrial pension plans which they approved and exempted from taxation. Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? Yet, this is less than 2% of the number of active corporations in the country. And of this 2%, only 29% of the employees were included in the company pension plans. Yes, it works very nicely for the executives. But if it adds up to poverty for the worker, what then? Well, the Social Security Act also has a provision for those hardship cases needing additional help, enabling the several states to make adequate provisions for aged persons. Let's see if this plan results in adequate provisions. If Jack Jones needs help, he goes to the welfare board in his local county. The welfare board is required to check all of Mr. Jones's assets. Do you have any savings, Mr. Jones? How much property? Can't you live with your son-in-law? Mr. Jones, do you have any insurance? Can you liquidate any of your assets? Etc., etc., etc. If the welfare board is finally satisfied that Mr. Jones is really a hardship case, then they declare him eligible for old age relief assistance. But what Mr. Jones receives depends not on his needs, but on what his county and state can afford. For the county and state must share this old age relief cost with the federal government. And since when can living on relief be considered an adequate provision? The Welfare Department in Schenectady, New York. Public Welfare Commissioner Leo Vosberg.
In Schenectady County, approximately 50% of all our relief cases are old folks over 65 years of age. A good many of them are receiving Social Security benefits. However, these benefits are totally inadequate to provide them with the bare necessities of life. The average payment received by these individuals, according to our records, is $17.80 per month. As I see this problem, the constant increase in the number of old folks forced to apply for relief will become more aggravated unless the Social Security grants are both increased and extended to cover those not now covered by the Social Security Act.
The UE demands adequate old age benefits, and adequate means enough to live on. The University of California's Heller Committee has found that $220 a month is necessary for a decent living standard for two people. The income of most elderly people is far beneath this. UE says the senior citizens of our land must not be thrown on the scrap heap. Their welfare remains the joint responsibility of government and industry. Therefore, the UE demands a combined minimum pension payment from government and industry of $120 a month for every individual worker. This is not charity, but a debt owed to those who helped to create the great wealth of this nation. And the country can easily afford it. America is the richest land in the world. Factories, mines, mills, and farms overflowing with goods. Year by year, the income of the nation has grown. 1939, 73 billions. 1943, 170 billions. 1947, 202 billions. 1948, 226 billions. And year by year, the profits of the large corporations have gone zooming upward. 1939, 4.1 billion after taxes. 1943, 10.4 billion. 1947, 18.1 billion. 1948, 21.4 billion. But old age benefits? Going nowhere. Yes, there's wealth enough for a decent life for all, young and old. These hands grew old, building the earth's richest nation, building the wealthiest corporations in the world. We owe them a decent life, and we can afford it. We can afford it right now. In November 1948, the Social Security Board already had collected $10 billion in its fund. $10 billion, and more coming in all the time. But only a little more than $500 million going out each year for retirement benefits. It's time Congress lived up to its responsibilities and passed adequate legislation for old age insurance benefits. The money's there, and the UE says it's time it was spent for people, not for hot arms, and not for a Cold War. We believe that security begins at home, and we fight for security after the job, as well as on the job. Pension clubs spring up in UE towns all over the country, one to a plant. A man doesn't forget the lessons he learned on the job. By yourself, you're licked. United, you're strong. Yes, all UE members, young and old, know that you've got to fight for security after the job as well as on the job. UE is taking this fight to industry, insisting that people are as important as profits. Going to state legislatures and to Congress, asking government officials to listen to the facts, laying the situation before the lawmakers, telling them, we want action, now. And the UE is explaining the problem of the pensioner to the community. It's everybody's business. And every signed petition adds another voice, demanding that Congress do something to help. Businessmen understand the economics of it. And the men of religion, of every faith, join in the campaign. Yes, it's everybody's business. Telling the country about UE's national program for better wages and pensions. Telling the people this is every American's fight. Yes, security starts with the people. Security starts with Pat Donald and the hundreds of thousands of workers who made America's wealth. We fight for this now, so old age can be not a scrap heap, but really a time to rest, a time of security, a time of peace.